Welcome to the Sam and Sam Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. My name is Sam McGinnis, one of your co-hosts for the Sam and Sam Show. I'd like to welcome on my co-host, as always, Sam Teets. How you doing?
I'm doing great, McGinnis. It's good to be back with you on another Friday afternoon, or evening at this point.
Yeah, it's nice. I actually had to move because, we've got the logo in the way of my face. I had that issue last week, too.
Oh, do we? Okay, sorry about that.
No, that's not like it's your fault. But we got some great NFL news today. Obviously, we have the new segment, Grueling Truths of the Week back, along with some other interesting stuff today. I really like the way the show was looking before we started. So we're going to just get right into it. J.J. Watt signs with the Cardinals.
And he agrees to go to Arizona, play in the desert. It's a 2-year deal worth up to $31 million, $23 million guaranteed. So for J.J. Watt, who was healthy, by the way, for all 16 games this past season, but has struggled with injuries the past couple of years, decided to get $23 guaranteed million here towards the end of his career. That's a pretty solid bag for him. And also, it's a team in Arizona that's not, I wouldn't call them a Super Bowl contender, but they definitely are a playoff contender. They could go.
Yes.
I mean, we'll talk about this later. They're expanding the season to 17 games, but they could go 8-9, 9-8, somewhere in that range, or even win 10 games or so and get in there. And for J.J. Watt, it's a warm weather climate. It's a nice place to live, better than a Green Bay or a Buffalo, some of the teams they're talking about him going to. And, you get to play alongside Chandler Jones, who's a pretty exciting pass rusher in his own right.
This move makes no sense to me, but we'll get to that in a little bit. All right, we'll move on to the next thing then. We got Von Miller not being charged for the case in Colorado.
Yeah, there was a situation going on in Colorado, and they were very tight-lipped about it, so I don't know all the details. But I do believe there was maybe a little bit of a domestic incident with Von Miller. I don't think it was necessarily domestic violence so much as it was just maybe into some text messages that looked a little bit serious, not necessarily not necessarily threatening. I don't have all the details again, so I should just say that again. I don't have everything laid out because they haven't released everything. So I can't say exactly what's going on, but he's not been charged. Some people were speculating that if he was charged in something like that, the Denver Broncos would turn down his player option for next season. He would become a free agent and maybe not even sign with a new team for a while. But it sounds like Denver is committed to keeping Von Miller, and he's not going to be charged. So his career with the Broncos will continue at least for one more year.
Yeah, how many times have we heard stories like this? All right, moving on. What's our next thing, Teets?
So the Washington football team has cut Alex Smith, the comeback player of the year, this favorite story everyone likes to talk about. They have cut him, and Alex Smith, this comes a couple days after Alex Smith had done an interview where he basically said he was not in the plans for the Washington football team for this past season. He kind of threw a wrench to their plans by showing up and outperforming Dwayne Haskins, and Kyle Allen got hurt, and he was outperforming all these other guys that were available. So Alex Smith kind of said he threw a wrench in their plans. They didn't really want him to be their quarterback, but he showed up, he played well enough to be their quarterback and to get them to the playoffs. And now cutting him, freeing up a ton of cap space. But, Alex Smith, he might have been the best quarterback on your roster, and you just cut him.
Yeah. So here's the question. Is Tyler Heineke just then is that what you're deciding on, or are you going to reach for somebody else? Because if you're not, it's a stupid move. It might even be a stupid move even if you did go for another quarterback.
Ron Rivera and the Washington football team are sipping the Taylor Heineke Kool-Aid, man. They are so hung up on this one-game performance in the playoffs against Tampa Bay's defense. Ironically, it might have been the best. It might have been the best performance in the playoffs against Tampa Bay's defense, though. He might have been the best. He might have outperformed Patrick Mahomes, Drew Brees, and Aaron Rodgers against Tampa Bay. But I will say this: it's ridiculous. This guy has one career regular season start and one start in the playoffs. He performed very well in his one playoff start most recently and in the one start he had during the regular season. But let's not go acting like there's a guarantee here. I know they signed an extension earlier this offseason, but there's absolutely nothing guaranteed here for Taylor Heineke moving forward.
Yeah, it's not like you're re-signing like Joe Burrow or somebody like that who is still rookie, but you can see there is something there.
Yeah, this is not a case where you're – let me put it this way. Re-signing Andy Dalton, at least Andy Dalton's a veteran quarterback. I think that's probably a better comparison, who is past his prime. But at least you're getting something from Andy Dalton. You have no idea what Taylor Heineke will do next year.
Yeah, he could be great or he could be absolutely terrible. You don't know yet. All right, next.
Yeah, some more news that came out today. The Broncos are planning on franchise tagging Justin Simmons for the second year in a row. He's a Pro Bowl safety. They tagged last year, and they couldn't reach out a long-term deal so far, but they're planning on tagging him again, and they're hopefully going to get a long-term deal done this time around. Simmons has been one of the best safeties in the NFL over the past 2 seasons, and he's the first guy we know for sure of this upcoming free agency class that's going to be franchise tagged. There are certainly plenty of other guys out there like Dak Prescott for Dallas and Allen Robinson for the Chicago Bears who probably will be franchise tagged, but we don't know yet. Some other news, the Bills have signed Micah Hyde, another really good safety, to a 2-year extension. Him and Jordan Poyer have been some of the best safeties in the NFL, and the Bills have really invested a lot of time and money into their secondary, so they're making sure they're going to keep that together. Jason Kelsey is returning for another year with the Philadelphia Eagles. There's always been rumors around him for maybe the past 2 or 3 years that he's planning on retiring, but the former All-Pro center is coming back for at least one more year with Philadelphia, and he's reworked his contract to do that to free up a little extra cap space. And speaking of reworking contracts, Ben Roethlisberger, Big Ben, is coming back for one more year at the very least in Pittsburgh. They reworked his contract, so they saved $15 million on the salary cap this year. This was the only way he was ever going to come back because you could not possibly pay him the ridiculous cap hit. It was over $40 million if he had stayed on his regular contract.
Yeah, so as a Steelers fan, how does it feel to be robbed of yet another season, now being stuck with Ben Roethlisberger yet again?
I'd like to point out we started
so hard.
I'd like to point out we started 11-0 last season, McGinnis, and your Detroit Lions. How does it feel to be robbed of a football life, McGinnis? A life of fandom. How do you feel like it's stuck with a life of misery? But no, in all honesty, looking at the options, I would almost rather have signed Jameis Winston and Dalton in free agency. I think those guys would have been a bit of an upgrade because they can just throw deeper. That's the issue. The issue for me is Ben's arm. It's got nothing to do with.
Yeah, what did we see from both the quarterbacks that didn't have arms in the playoffs? It was awful.
Yeah, and to Ben's credit, he threw for over 30 touchdowns this past year, but he was attempting very short passes. I think he ranked 30th in yards per pass and yards per pass completion in the NFL this year. And you can't do that with the way Pittsburgh's formatted right now. They don't have much of an offensive line. They have no running game. You can't do that. Defenses eventually figure that out. They sit press coverage on your wide receivers so they can't get off the line. You can't throw those quick passes, and then everything just falls apart. So to me, I understand the move because you don't feel like you have a better option on your roster, and you don't because you don't want to put Mason Rudolph out there and you don't want to put Dwayne Haskins out there. So I respect the move to keep Ben around, but at the same point, I still think going out and getting Andy Dalton or Jameis Winston, cutting Ben Roethlisberger, maybe it's just a lateral move, but it's a cheaper move. So I don't know. I'm kind of up back and forth with this one.
Yeah, Pittsburgh's situation at QB is difficult, so I don't completely fault them for signing Big Ben, but it's got to be exhausting as a Pittsburgh fan that you're going to see the exact same messiness you saw this last year.
Well, yeah, we have no money to go out and sign anyone in free agency, so it's never exciting that way. The defense is good now, but the offense was really good for a while there when we had Ben healthy, Antonio Brown, and Le'Veon Bell. The offense was really good, and the defense was crap. And now the defense is really good, and the offense is crap. We can never just get them together at the same time. If we did, we probably would have had a 7-3 Super Bowl by now.
It's hard to do both of those at the same time just because of cap space.
Oh, yeah. That's what Pittsburgh's finding out a little bit. That's kind of why it's fallen apart in the past couple of years.
And this is also why quarterbacks should ask for less money. Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, I'm looking at you too.
Stafford's contract is actually pretty friendly right now. The Rams have a little bit of wiggle room because of that deal.
Yeah, I meant like when they first signed Matthew Stafford. He was probably the first of what I would call the super QB contracts, and then everybody after that was just like, oh, we can ask for that.
Yeah, that's fair. I think like after that Stafford deal, everyone was getting record-setting money at like back to back to back. It just kept going and going. But speaking of working with the salary cap, because the NFL salary cap this year is going to have a floor of $180 million and a ceiling of about $188 million, teams are going to have to cut a lot of veteran players on just unmanageable contracts because they need to save money. And the cuts have already started. We've seen the past couple of days, we've seen Desmond Trufant was informed he's going to be cut. The Miami Dolphins are exploring trades for Kyle Van Noy. If there are none, they're going to cut him. Golden Tate was cut from the Giants. Who else? Josh Gordon was cut by Seattle. Kyle Rudolph cut by the Vikings. Gabe Jackson by the Raiders. Josh Hill by the Saints. And Richie Incognito recently also by the Raiders. So it's a mess. And I think it was Diana Rossini from ESPN said she had spoken to an NFL executive who said the coming weeks were going to be a massacre for veteran players just because, the salary cap is not going up like it usually does. So you have a situation now where teams that were giving out contracts, planning for the salary cap to go up significantly, get closer to $200 million this year. Now it's not going to go up that way. And so now you have to free up that $12 to $20 million in cap space by letting go of a bunch of free agent or a bunch of veteran players.
Yeah, and honestly, the Golden Tate one is one of the interesting ones for me because He was great for the Lions. He was great for Seattle when he played for them. But he hasn't gotten much time with the Giants since he's gone there, which I think is somewhat of a mistake on their part. So maybe he'll get another chance at another team.
Yeah, I think so. And part of it's also because he's older. He's 32 years old. But the Giants haven't had like a true number one receiving option. He's been injured a little bit, but New York doesn't have a superstar wide receiver. Golden Tate could arguably be one of the better options up there, along with Darius Slayton. The issue really is, though, it's the age, it's the injuries, and also you have quarterback Daniel Jones, who just isn't that great. So he doesn't get as many options as maybe you would with Matt Stafford is much better. So I think it's a little bit of a combination of everything here, just putting Golden Tate in a tricky spot for a 32-year-old, but now he gets a chance to go and pick the next team he signs with.
Yeah, I think the thing is Golden Tate, I don't think is truly a number one receiver unless it's a bad team, but he's a solid number two. Like if you put him with Cooper Kupp, or I heard an interesting take, if somehow the Rams got Kenny Golladay, they'd have a solid number one and two with Cooper Kupp down there.
Yeah, the Rams already have a decent number two, I think, in Robert Woods, but you make Kenny Golladay up there. You add Kenny Golladay to that group. And the idea of having Golladay, who already has that chemistry with Stafford, plus Cooper Kupp, plus Robert Woods, plus Tyler Higbee at tight end, suddenly you're back to what the Rams were 2 or 3 years ago when they were this dominant offense that had Brandon Cooks, Woods, and Kupp on the same team. And that's how they made the playoffs. They also had a good running game at that point in time. So if you get Kenny Golladay on the team, suddenly the Rams look like a much better Super Bowl contender.
Yeah. I would actually argue right now they're already the best team in the division, or will do the best. But we might have another conversation about that at another time. We need to move on here.
Yep. All right, so the NFL is planning to expand the regular season to 17 games starting this coming year. And we kind of knew this was going to happen. There were rumblings about this last year, so we knew this expansion was coming at some point. And, of course, they expanded the playoffs this past season as well. So we knew they were trying to fit in more games. The players knew this was going to happen eventually after they signed the new CBA. And here we are. The NFL, which is probably trying to recoup some lost revenue, or maybe not necessarily lost revenue, but revenue they didn't get, they expected to get from this past season because of ticket sales, that kind of stuff. Right. They're now going to recoup that with an extra game, and they're also going to be signing some mega TV contracts here probably in the coming months, and they're really going to like those new contract extensions. It's all about money, McGinnis, and here we go. It's a money game.
We've always known it's all about money. I don't mind the playoff expansion as much because I'm an NHL guy where literally half the teams make the playoffs. Actually, more than, because there's only 31 teams. But the extra game messes with me a little bit. I'm not a guy of change very much. I kind of like if you've got something set, I like it that way. So
no, I agree with you.
When the NFL does this, it's not particularly wrong, other than the fact that the NFL, I think at some point they're going to have to realize there's going to have to come an end to the amount of games, because I think this will happen another time or two where they'll expand the season, but they're going to start realizing with the number of injuries that's going to cause with just that extra game, and teams now that will probably bench people sooner just because they know they're going to make the playoffs, because you don't want that extra game for somebody to get injured like Patrick Mahomes or something.
Wait, because you already know there's a week 17 for some teams is just like a bye week sometimes. You know, they just sit all their guys.
Right. Like
Kansas City this past year, and even Pittsburgh this past year, they weren't playing any of their competitive players in week 17. Now you might have 2 weeks like that during the regular season if a team gets far enough ahead. So that's probably a concern here. And also, part of what makes the NFL such a high-quality product, or so in demand, is the fact that there's so few games. There are only 16 games. There are 80-plus games in an NBA season generally.
Yeah.
And Major League Baseball season has over 100 games. I mean, there's so many games in these other
64. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's too many.
There's so many games in the other sports. There's 16 in the NFL regular season. That's why it's so popular. Now, if you begin watering it down, they've done this before. There used to be 12 games. There was 14, 16, 17. So you start watering it down a little bit by making more and more games. People don't feel compelled to watch as much every single time every single time the TV comes on. So I think there is a little bit of worse in there. And of course, the big thing, like you said, it's going to be the injuries. I mean, you're going to have more injuries here. Just more games means more injuries, means more wear and tear. And from my perspective, I'm a big historical guy. You make 17 season regular season game, 17 seasons, and now all those single season records from years past where 16 game seasons, or even going back to 14 game seasons, all the career records that were set during 16 game season eras, you know, you might see some of those start falling. And how do you evaluate that? Because they're different games.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We're entering a new era, and I think Greg here says something interesting about it, to your point on revenue.
Oh, yeah, let me pull that up. Sorry about that. Hey, Greg, good to see you. With the pandemic still in place, having the extra games with very few or no fans and stands will help resolve the money problems. And that's exactly why I agree with Greg. I think doing it right now makes a lot of sense, not only because of the TV contracts they have coming up, but also because this gives them an extra chance to make back some of the money. And it's not like they're bleeding money here. They have plenty of it. It's just that they prefer to have more all the time. And they probably did not make as much as they want to this past year because of the pandemic. They'll recoup some of that loss by adding an extra game.
I think you actually missed a word there. He said it will not help resolve their money problems.
Wait, really?
Yeah, he did.
Oh,
He's
disagreeing with me. How dare you, Greg? But no, he's disagreeing with there. I could see that because of the fans. I could see that being an issue. My only thing will be that you get a lot of commercial money. And I think the TV contracts, though, I don't know exactly how they're done. If they're done because of game, like on a game basis, or because of just on a yearly basis, like you're getting paid a flat amount, or if you're getting paid for viewership on a certain range. So I don't know about that. So the TV contracts, who knows if that will impact it. But I can see what Greg's saying.
If it's going to depend on the fans at that time, because we're looking at COVID now. They're thinking for the most part this is going to be over by the end of the year. All of this starts in the fall. So I have a feeling they're going to be allowing more fans in at that point, or there might even be a situation in which they're like vaccinated fans only, because at that point there's going to be a lot more vaccinations out. So it's going to depend on COVID more than anything. Yeah,
they're really going to start ramping up the vaccinations from what I've heard over the summer. So I think by the fall you will have a larger number of fans allowed in stadiums. And I also think that by potentially the playoffs, you might have 75 to 85% capacity, if not all open entirely. So I think there will be some chances to make the money back this coming season by the end of the year.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. I don't think one game is going to make enough of a difference, but they'll take anything they can get at this point.
Absolutely. But now you want to do something where we looked at my mock draft, my most recent mock draft. I had 3 of them.
Yeah, he's had 3 of them, and I will say, having also been a person who writes long articles or has written really long articles, even if it's shorter, some of these take ridiculously long and way longer than you'd think when you start writing them.
Yeah, I know. This took me a while to get this done, and I'm trying to figure out the best configuration here, but you can't really see it in that one, so I'm going to switch it around here, and we're just going to go back to being little people on the side right here.
You don't need to see us. It's the article.
It's the article that matters. But anyways, we just want to cover the top 5 picks. I believe you said McGinnis. So we'll look at number 1. I think this is a pretty obvious one. I'm not going to change this ever. It's Trevor Lawrence going to Jacksonville Jaguars.
I think I saw literally the dumbest thing the other day about this. Somebody put Zach Wilson at number 1.
People want to be unique. People want people to click on their articles and read their stuff. People want to have a different opinion. People just overthink this kind of stuff. McGinnis, it's just flat out simple. This decision is already made. There's no reason to second guess it.
Yeah, as you said, the decision is already made. They don't even, whatever conversations, unless something went really wacky, they already know who they're going to pick.
Yep. Number 2, I had Penei Sewell going to the Jets. I think the Jets will probably take Zach Wilson here instead. But I'm of the mindset you could give Sam Darnold one more year, because I'm not convinced Zach Wilson is going to be that great anyways. Give Sam Darnold another year or 2. And you got Penei Sewell, who will be, he's by far the best tackle in this draft class, or at least the best offensive line prospect in the class. And you put him next to Mekhi Becton, who you drafted last year in this round, bookend tackles for the next 10 years. That's good value from the New York Jets, although I could see if they draft the quarterback, I wouldn't be shocked either. So I could see them drafting a quarterback here.
Yeah.
It's Zach Wilson or Penei Sewell for me, though. It's got to be one of those 2 players.
Yeah, and you've got an interesting one coming up here at number 3. You've got the Carolina Panthers trading up.
Yeah, Carolina trades up from 8 to 3. So this is the Miami Dolphins. Miami obviously got their quarterback, or at least the quarterback they think they might have a future with, in Tua Tagovailoa this past season. So now Carolina, who's had Teddy Bridgewater, who's shopped around for Deshaun Watson and Matthew Stafford, but hasn't landed either of them so far. They've let know they're not necessarily happy with Teddy Bridgewater or not content with him. They want to get someone who can look forward to the future with. And they trade up here with Miami, who's looking to move back and accumulate picks, and Carolina drafts Zach Wilson at number 3.
Yeah, I could actually see this if Carolina gives something to the Dolphins that's significant. Because what you said is true. they've got what they think is the future potentially in Tua. I don't see a reason you would need to draft someone again yet, because Tua might be your answer. He looked pretty good. He wasn't like phenomenal, and he had some bad games, but he was looking pretty good for a rookie. So it's not necessarily their time to get a QB, and if the proper value is there, I could see this happening.
Well, and here in Miami, if you trade back here, you could actually get potentially a 2022 first-round pick and Carolina's number 8 overall pick here, just for moving back 5 spots and still potentially get a blue-chip caliber prospect. So I think that's a great move for Miami. We got another trade here at 4. The Atlanta Falcons trade back to Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos go up from 9 to 4th overall to get their quarterback of the future, because Drew Lock tied Carson Wentz for interceptions last season. That just doesn't work. So you need to get another guy in the building. Justin Fields has taken a lot of heat recently for a couple bad games he had. Now, I originally had Atlanta actually drafting Justin Fields here in the first 2 mocks, but this time around, I have Atlanta trading back to stick with Matt Ryan and draft just more skill players later on. And Denver comes up to get their QB of the future in Justin Fields.
Again, could see this because Matt Ryan is still of some veteranosity and quality. So, yeah, I could see this happening too, but I think this would actually, unlike the other move, I think this would be a stupid one for Atlanta. Now is the time to start getting a quarterback for the future, because then you have him coming under Matt Ryan and coaching him, kind of like how Brett Favre did for Aaron Rodgers for a short period of time.
That's true. That doesn't always work. I mean, the future could be 2 or 3 years away. And not by that time, 2 or 3 years down the line, you don't even know if the head coach is still going to be there. He could be fired after a year or two. So to me, the idea of drafting a QB that's going to be 2 or 3 years down the line is a little bit ludicrous, because you don't know if you're going to have your job by that point even anymore.
I mean, even 1 year is better than none, in my opinion. I know how they keep throwing these QBs in the fire. In the first few games, they usually have some issues, and then after that, they're good for a while. But I think it's helpful, at least for the QBs coming in, if you can get any amount of time with a veteran quarterback.
I understand that. I disagree, but I do understand that. Number 5, the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm taking Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is probably the rarest prospect in this draft, maybe outside Trevor Lawrence, because there's not been a tight end prospect in the last 10 years that was better than Kyle Pitts. This guy is, I mean, he's huge. He's like, I think 6'4". He weighs a pretty good amount. He's solid in the running game. Not fantastic, but solid as a run blocker. And it's just a mismatch for everyone. He can run faster than any linebacker can. He can out jump, and he's just taller than any safety or any corner. So you can't cover this guy. Maybe Levante David could do it. Maybe Fred Warner could do it. There's probably about 5 linebackers in the entire NFL capable of covering Kyle Pitts. There's only been 2 tight ends actually selected in the top 10 draft picks in the past 10 years, Eric Ebron and T.J. Hawkinson, both by the Detroit Lions, by the way. I think Kyle Pitts can easily join that group. I think he's easily more talented than both of those guys.
Yeah, so here's my thing about the Cincinnati Bengals picks here. If you don't get somebody who can block, whether it's a tight end or a blocking running back or an offensive lineman, you've made a mistake. Don't turn Joe Burrow into Andrew Luck, please.
Like, you can get those guys better. This is a deep offensive line class. There's going to be good left tackles and good right tackles available in the 3rd round.
They better get at least 1 or 2. I would be absolutely pissed as Joe Burrow if they didn't.
No, I would be too if I was Joe Burrow. But anyways, that's all. You can go check out the rest of this article on thegruelingtruth.com. You can also check out my socials, Sam_Teets33 on Twitter, where I have all my articles actually posted. So feel free to go check those out, and you can see the rest of my mock draft there. But for now, we're going to transition to some NBA news. Now that we took 23 minutes on the NFL stuff, we're going to go to the NBA very briefly here. Not much to talk about. Blake Griffin has agreed to a buyout with the Detroit Pistons, and the Nets and Lakers are 2 of the front runners to get him. What a shock. A veteran free agent wants to sign with the 2 best teams in the NBA. How shocking. But this is a chance.
Oh, he's fed up. That's what it is.
Yeah, this is a chance for Blake Griffin to basically go from Detroit to Los Angeles or to New York, and ended up on a team that's capable of winning a championship. So that'll be a good move for him. The standings in the NBA, there are 6 teams with 20 or more wins in the West, only 3 in the East. So the West continues to be the better conference. No surprise there. The Lakers are kind of limping into the All-Star break without Anthony Davis. I think LeBron sat out for the first time this past week. He hasn't sat out all season prior to this point. And they're still struggling to put together a winning streak with Anthony Davis sidelined. But hopefully they'll be back after the All-Star break. And speaking of the All-Star break, the All-Star rosters are set. Kevin Durant Kevin Durant's actually not playing the game, but Kevin Durant drafted Kyrie Irving and James Harden, both of his teammates, LeBron opted to take Giannis Antetokounmpo, who was the captain of the opposing team last year, now LeBron's teammate, and also Luka Doncic. So they're going to be a very interesting matchups here in this wildcard game, assuming there's any defense that's played at all and these guys take it seriously at all, which they might not.
Yeah, I feel like it'd be kind of stupid to take an all-star game seriously. Just the same thing with the NFL stuff and the NHL stuff. This is not something you want to take too seriously, because if you get injured during like an all-star game, that would be the stupidest thing ever.
That's true, but it was actually fun to watch the all-star game last year because it was competitive. There was still high scoring, but down the stretch, they got really competitive because there was money on the line for different charities and different organizations. That's how the NBA incentivizes these players to play hard. And there was actually some very competitive defense played down the stretch in last year's All-Star game. Hopefully, we see something a little bit similar this year. I wouldn't count on it, but, you can hope.
You can always hope.
You can always hope, McGinnis. There's no guarantees, but you can always hope. But that will do it for my NBA news. NHL news, McGinnis. Hit it, what we have right now.
All right, so the Flames fired their head coach, and I actually like this move. Normally, I'm not like you want to instantly fire the head coaches because that's not always the smartest thing to do. But in my opinion, the Flames increased their talent this year, and then they proceeded to do the exact same thing they did last year, which is completely unacceptable. If you increase talent, you should expect more wins. That's just period. Their goaltending is better from Jacob Markstrom, and then you've also got David Rittich, and you lost to Mike Smith, who was kind of the weak spot part of that. Yeah, you should be better, and they're not. So I'm not completely disliking this move to get rid of the coach. I mean, when the talent increases and the team play doesn't, there's clearly something wrong in management, not the players at that point. So interesting move from the Flames there. I actually like it, and hopefully for them, and also my prediction earlier this season of them being on top of the division, which was a little ambitious. Hopefully they turn it around for my own sake of not getting scolded later in the season.
Yeah, I doubt they're going to come back and top the Jets and Maple Leafs, considering the lead those two teams have built right now.
No, they're not going to. I just need them to make the playoffs so it looks a little bit more legitimate.
All right, I can understand that.
All right. On a sad note, I'm not going to spend too much on this, but on a sad note, Wayne Gretzky's father died at 82. I think it was yesterday. That's just unfortunate and sad for the hockey world in general. And I don't really know what else to say about that. That's just
I have no idea how to transition. Just go to the next. I mean, you really can't. It's a sad event, obviously, for the whole hockey community, and hopefully, luckily, got to see his son go out there and excel and make tons of money and win a lot of Stanley Cups. So, he lived to 82 years old. Got to see probably the best of his son's life, maybe. So, I think he probably had a lot of great experiences as well. So, it's sad for the family. Hopefully, they're all doing all right after this tragedy. But
all right,
you got to go forward. You got to move forward here. I don't know how to transition after that, McGinnis. I don't know how to do it.
3-time Stanley Cup champion Brent Seabrook retires after 15 seasons in the NHL. He was with the Blackhawks for a long time, including during their big run, and that's where his 3 Stanley Cups came from, was their 2010, 13, and 15 runs.
Yeah, sorry, Greg, I haven't been checking the chat enough. Greg commented they haven't played defense in the All-Star game since the 90s, and I tend to agree, but there were moments last year. If you look for it, Greg, there were some moments, but I tend to agree there. Sorry about that, McGinnis. I had to interrupt you there for a second. So I haven't been reading chat enough. I need to get back to it.
I have an interesting conversation here. So Alex Ovechkin got pissed off at one of the players the other night, and he decided it would be a good idea if he speared him in the groin. He ends up getting fined $5,000 for it, but I just want to stop here. We have seen this happen a number of times where players get pissed and then decide to spear other players in the groin. I think there should be something more significant than a $5,000 for a guy that makes as much money as Alex Ovechkin does, but that's just me personally. I'm interested on your take.
Well, I'm going to pull up a number here. I think the NBA fined Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert for talking out and for criticizing the officiating. All right, so the NBA fined Donovan Mitchell $25,000 for criticizing the officials in his post-game press conference the other day.
That's a little extreme, I would say, but yeah.
$25,000 for criticizing a referee versus with this $5,000 for spearing a guy in the groin.
Also, you do have to note that these players do make less than the NBA players do.
That's true, yeah.
but I don't think it's that much of a gap. Now, I will, for those who don't know, the player he did spear, if I'm looking at this right, is Trent Frederick. I remember seeing the clip. I think that same player actually tried to fight him in the same game, and Ovechkin was just standing there like, what the heck you doing? And he literally just walked away because, he had his gloves off and Ovechkin didn't. And then, he decides to spear him in the groin. I don't remember which one of those happened first, but either way, I think that's an interesting event sequence.
Yeah, and our next blood news here, you're talking about suspension, too, from hitting someone, actually. So a little bit of violence here.
Yeah, it's interesting. So suspended 2 games for a hit on Nathan McKinnon. I looked at this hit, and it's really bad. It was basically shoulder to face of Nathan McKinnon, and I think I forgot to mention the player that got suspended, but it's Joachim Blichfield, and who this is his first game of this NHL season, and he decides to then go get himself suspended for the next 2. Great run there, right? Don't hit players in the head with your shoulder. It's just a stupid idea. It was pretty clear he was coming in like that. And on top of it, even as an NHL player, just remember they care more about their star players. So especially if you go out and hit somebody like Nathan McKinnon, you should expect a suspension.
Yeah. Or retaliation from other players out there. We do have a comment from Greg Rickry. Ken Linsman made a career out of spearing guys, but got away with it for the most part because he was also a top player. That's true. Sometimes the top players get a little bit benefit of the doubt there.
That's how I feel about Brad Marchand. He gets suspended like 2 games at a time for absolutely destroying players, in which I would almost go as far to be like, no, that was intentionally like trying to hurt somebody. You suspend them for the season for that, and he's getting suspended for like 2 games. Yes, absolutely. The NHL in wrong ways favors their top players, and I think the NHL safety department is kind of a joke.
Yeah, well, it's bad. It's bad for their wallets, McGinnis. They sit out their best players. So
they need to just do what's right. They're not going to, but I'm saying they should.
Yeah.
Our next piece of news: Canadians fire head coach Claude Julian and their goalie coach Stephen Waite.
So Claude Julian, I mean, they only made the playoffs, twice in the past 4 years with him?
It's interesting. So Claude Julian, before he came to Montreal, was a good coach. You look at his record, his overall records are actually really good, but you look at every season since he has come to Montreal, maybe 1 or 2 of those seasons have been good, but they've kind of been mediocre since he's come there.
Yeah, he was really good in Boston, but it looks like coming back to Montreal really was the issue for him, and things have kind of fallen off since then.
Also, you don't go from Boston to Canada, but that's a big no-no. I don't know what compelled him to do that. Probably money of some sort. This was before, this was before I got into hockey. But dang, that's an interesting move on anybody's part.
No, I think I definitely agree. And Greg agrees with your take on the NHL should just be doing what's right versus protecting their wallets.
I don't think a lot of people would disagree with that on air.
Yeah. No, I don't think they would be smart to. Trust me. Although. There's some audacious people that work at this network that might do that, but
being specifically one.
one audacious person who might be able to do it. But the goal truth of the week. This is a segment that we aired for the first time last week, and now we're going back to it. So I'm just going to read the first one you have down here.
Yep.
Russell Wilson is still going to be screwed, and maybe even Russell Wilson is still going to be screwed because of Watt coming into the division. And maybe even more so because of it. Yeah. And I think that's pretty. I think everyone can pretty much agree with that. He was complaining about the offensive line in Seattle, and now all that's happened is you have a top 10 defensive end because J.J. Watt is still a top 10 defensive end, just decides to up and sign with your division rival.
Yeah, if you don't go out in the draft and get, like, from this depth, some offensive linemen, that's just going to accelerate the issues with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, it's going to be problematic. There's no way it can just keep going on as it has been. Elsewhere, we got Alex Smith was the best proven QB option currently on the roster when Washington cut him. I think I alluded to this a little bit earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Taylor Heineke, 1 game as a starter. One game.
This is classic Oh, and I lost my thought, but it's classic seeing the shiny thing before it gets close. It's just a dumb idea to do that. I honestly, I if I was at the beginning of the season, I would in practices have Alex Smith and Heineke go at it to see who's better, because you did see something from Heineke there. But if Alex Smith is the better QB in practice, then put him in the games too. He did well for you. He had a good winning record when he was with you during this last season. So why would you cut him? Made no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, Alex Smith didn't have necessarily great individual performances, but you don't have a better option. You're picking in the mid-20s or in the I figure if they're picking 19 or they're picking in the early 20s in the draft, but either way, you're not picking in the range to get a top 4 quarterback. So I don't know what you're expecting me to do this offseason. Unless you're getting Dalton or Winston, I don't think there's a better option for you right now than Alex Smith.
And Dalton is not an upgrade from Alex Smith. I would actually.
No, I think Dalton is an upgrade from Alex Smith, just a little bit.
Nah, I would put Alex Smith above Dalton. Jameis Winston might be, I would say, is better than Alex Smith. Granted, the interceptions thing, but yeah, I would put Alex Smith ahead of him at this point in time.
You do know Alex Smith had more interceptions than touchdowns this past year, right?
I understand. But look, I think part of this goes back to a little bit of what makes Tom Brady great is the team aspect, because although his numbers aren't that different from some of the other quarterbacks that have played, you'll notice every time he starts, they win more. So it might more have to do with a team leadership thing than an actual play thing.
All right. And your final grueling truth of the week, Washington is investing too much into Taylor Heineke because they don't know what he is yet. And we've talked about this past couple of minutes already. They gave him a contract extension, a very small contract extension, one that's not very risky for them already this offseason. And now, is he going to be their starter going into next year? That seems a little bit of a fishy idea.
Ambitious.
Ambitious. Some might say ludicrous.
Yeah, I think that's the right word. All right, we want to move on then to player comparison. I threw this one together. I would hope you know this one, just for the sake of this is more your sport, and these are both prominent players that are current statistics. So
yeah, I'm looking at this right now. Let me see if I can copy this and get this up here. So give me a second. But
all right, so this is from the NBA. For those, we're about to pull this up, and the way we work with this player comparison thing is we pull up two players, and even sometimes we pull up the same player. We pull up some statistics about them, and then simply just make a point, simple point. So I kind of like this because you've got the little bit of the reveal in it. And I assume the first, the top and bottom are the difference here. These are NBA.
Yep. So just it's win-loss percentages. Starting from the left, going to the right. Win-loss percentage, games started, minutes played, field goals attempts, and field goal percentage. That's all per game stuff, by the way, for field goals and for points. So I'm looking at this, and these are both fairly elite players. One of them, the winning percentage I don't really count on. It's just one player. I don't count the winning percentage, but looking at the field goals attempted, 56%. So the one shooting 56.7% from the field has to be a high percentage big man. It has to be a center. It doesn't make sense to not be a center because no one would shoot that high percentage unless they're getting some inside looks. I wish you were giving me the assist numbers. The assist numbers were really differentiated here. I know the bottom one's Damian Lillard. The bottom one has to be Damian Lillard because he's shooting 20+ shots a game.
He's got one of them. He's not one of them.
He's not one of them?
I said you've got one of them.
Oh, I got one of them. I was like, oh my God, if I didn't get that, I would be really in big trouble.
He was going to be so upset with himself there.
36 games played. I'm just swapping back and forth to make sure, because I am looking at the overlay for the wins, losses, games started. 36, 56%. Rudy Gobert probably shoots higher. It's either going to be Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic. It's going to be one of the two.
Okay, the second one.
It's Jokic. There
you go. Yeah. So the reason I wanted to bring this up, because I see there are some differing statistics, but for the most part, these were same. I would almost say that the bottom player deserves to be a little bit higher on the NBA MVP race.
Yeah, so you got lower on the bottom, obviously. I think the issue is when you look at the field goals, you're looking at
my bad. I completely blanked on a name there for a second.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, Lillard on the bottom. The thing with him is he does more maybe for he carries his team pretty much, but at the same point, Jokic, guys like Embiid, they are scoring at just about the same rates, if not a little bit higher, but they're also getting the rebounds. Jokic is actually probably passing more than Lillard at this point. So to some extent, you have to take those into account as well. Jokic just does a little bit more because he's so versatile on offense, while Joel Embiid is usually a defensive player of the year candidate, and this year he's stayed healthy. He's scoring at an incredible rate. So I think that's probably why both those guys are higher than Damian Lillard on the MVP ladder.
Right. I'm just saying, out of the top 5, I would put him in maybe 4 or 3. I feel like it was a little low.
I could see him probably at 5. I don't know if I'd go much higher than that. So you still have LeBron, Jokic, Embiid, and maybe Curry ahead of him.
Well, I thought LeBron was, yeah. So on the NBA's the NBA reference, because these are fun pages. If you just need like a statistic page, NHL, NBA, and NFL reference, you can get pretty much any statistic you want. But on the actual reference site, they have LeBron as 6.
That's fair. I think the NBA's official site had him as 3rd, 4th. So I think there's a little bit of difference here in their power rankings. But I could understand LeBron not being necessarily that high because he has been a little bit off and he did set out one game recently. So I could see that.
It's just minor differences in opinion, but I don't think there would be much difference in the top 10. It's just where in the top 10.
Yeah, just where in the top 10. Usually the most top 10 players are basically the same.
Yeah.
But we'll transition to our final segment of the show, I believe, for today. It's Thinking or Dreaming.
It's always fun. You want to go first?
All right, I will. So the Detroit Lions should franchise tag Kenny Galladay. Sam McGinnis, is that thinking or dreaming?
You're in the middle of a rebuild. How old is Kenny Galladay again?
I can look it up real quick. I think he might be 27, if I guess off the top of my head. Kenny Galladay is 27 years old. Look at that.
Then I would say yes. If he was 30 or older, I would have said no because you're in rebuild phase. It's going to take a few years, and if he becomes valuable at like 30 or 31, and you still have him, that's a good receiver for whoever is going to be the quarterback at that point in time. Oh goodness! And here's a great question: will the Lions draft a quarterback in 2021 to replace Jared Goff at some point? Because obviously Jared Goff is not your answer.
No, Jared Goff's not your answer long term. It'd be very interesting, but I think you might wait until 2023 because there's not a great group of quarterbacks in 2022. And frankly, you probably would benefit more from trading back this year and just getting more picks for the long-term future.
Which also now they have a crap ton of picks. They already had a lot before, but now they have an excessive amount because of LA.
Wait, you're gonna have listen. The NFL draft is going to be the most exciting time for the Detroit Lions fans for the next 2 or 3 years.
I would go as far as to say always.
It will always be the most exciting time.
All right.
Hit me with one of yours.
All right. Watt coming to Russell Wilson's division will accelerate the breakdown of him and the organization and will ultimately lead to his end in Seattle.
I could see this happening, not necessarily just because of J.J. Watt. The Cardinals did have a Son Rex dispatch.
It just adds on to it.
Yeah. I agree too. The Cardinals had a Son Rex this past year, even though Chandler Jones was hurt for most of the season, so they didn't have as good of a pass rush as we anticipate they will this coming season with Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt both on the field. I think it's going to contribute to it because I just think that this situation set up for failure. Seattle is going to go maybe win 10 games this year. They're probably going to go 10-7, or I feel so weird saying 10-7, or 10-7, or 10-7 or 9-8. Yeah, I hate those numbers so much. I'm missing 9-7, but yeah, not 10-7, 9-8. They're probably going to finish somewhere in that range. They'll make the playoffs as a wild card, and they might get bounced in the first round. It's just what Seattle's been doing the past couple of years. And with another season of that, I would think it would be very difficult for Russell Wilson to stay there long term, especially if he's already unhappy and they haven't listened to him a lot.
Yeah, if you're a Seahawks fan and you wanted to keep Russell Wilson around, you're going to get your head coach to start giving him some freedom on offense, and you're going to start drafting offensive linemen. That and somehow fix the defense. It's bad.
And we better do it all very fast.
Very, very quickly. I mean, if you at least draft some offensive linemen, even if they don't pan out, Russell Wilson will at least get the message he's being paid attention to, which is clearly the message that has not been sent because they haven't been for the past few years.
All right, McGinnis, the NFL made a mistake when they expanded the regular season to 17 games.
I think we already covered this. This is 100%. It's just injury. It's just more chances for injuries, and it's completely unnecessary. And now you're ruining all the You're making statistics
More chances for money.
Oh, I hate the NFL sometimes. It's all about the money. That's how it was with the whole NFL kneeling thing. At first, they were like, oh, no, this is terrible because that was the way the crowd went with it at the time.
Yeah.
And now, because it's shifted, of course, they've shifted their opinion. I don't even care what your opinion is on this topic. It's just stupid that, like, keep one. What do you actually think about this? No, they're just in this to make the money. That's what it's
The NFL do whatever they can do to appease as many fans as possible, and therefore retain as much of an audience as possible and make as much money as possible. That's how the NFL operates.
Yup.
But let me hear your second one.
All right. So this is more interesting for me than it is for you, but John Tortorella should be fired.
All right. So I'm looking at his career record as a coach right now.
It's good. His overall.
It's good. His overall is pretty good. I mean, he's well in the green for overall, but looking at the past couple of years, they've made the playoffs in each of the past 4 seasons, but have they really gone anywhere? I mean, look at where they're finishing in the regular season within their division sometimes. It just doesn't seem like they're going very far into the playoffs, and they're not finishing up first in their division. So I don't understand. They're a middle-of-the-road team, I guess you could say, in a sense, because you mentioned that more than half the teams make the playoffs, right? So you can make the playoffs, and that necessarily isn't the most impressive thing that you're dealing with. So I think this is possibly thinking just because of the fact that at some point, you just have to try a new coach, right? I mean, at some point, it's just not working anymore.
That, and I don't like John Tortorella because he's kind of a jerk to the players and specifically reporters, by the way. He's even – and the worst part about it is it depends on what night you catch him. If you catch him on a night where his team just won, he's less likely to be pissed at you. But, of course, if he's lost, it's almost like a toddler mentality and you're supposed to be a professional. Like he's literally walked out of rooms or we're not talking about this because he lost a game. And I think that's kind of absurd. He's been fined multiple times for things like that. And honestly, his time in Columbus has not been all that impressive. It really hasn't. The 1 year, think about this, the 1 year they've won a playoff series out of all the years they've had with him was the year the Tampa Bay Lightning melted down, and they absolutely should have won that series. And the next year, they did. They handled them in 5 games. So literally, if it wasn't for one team choking, you wouldn't even have won a playoff series.
Yeah, he has not coached a team to a top 2 finish in their division since 2012. So it's been a while. They're currently 5th in the Central Division, so it doesn't look like that's going to change this year. And
Absolutely not.
it just hit, like I said, if it just hits a point where he's been there, this is his 6th season, with the team at this point. And if you're not going anywhere and you're finishing consistently in 4th or 5th in your division, it's probably time to cut bait.
Yeah. That's how I feel about it.
All right. Well, I guess that wraps up our show then, right? I mean, we've got nothing else on the ballot.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I think the NFL part of this actually took up literally half of the show today.
It was 23 minutes, but yes, it was much longer than I anticipated. We were about 3 minutes into the NFL stuff when we were flying on the board. I'm like, this will be done in 30 minutes today. And then 20 minutes later, we were still talking about the NFL. So it did take us a little while to get through that today, but you know what? It was fun. So it's totally all right that we took a little while.
Yeah, all right. Sam Teets already told you where you can find him, so I guess it's my turn then. You can find me at SamuelMcG22 on Twitter. If you're a hockey person in the U.S. and desperate for actual hockey news, because nobody talks about hockey down here, you can find some of my stuff there. I post articles at least weekly or so for another website also, and I do the NHL show about weekly now at this point on The Grueling Truth. So if you're looking for more NHL stuff, I'm your guy.
And again, make sure to check me out at Sam_Teets33 on Twitter because, like I said, I'm covering a lot of the draft stuff. We've got tons of draft stuff coming out here. We're going to have tons of football content. I'm going to try to do more NBA stuff. I usually am pretty good about mixing both of them, but I've been leaning more towards the NFL this year. So I have to kind of course correct a little bit there and get back to doing some more NBA stuff. And if you have a job that you maybe want to offer a college graduate, I'd be willing to accept. I'm looking at positions right now, so I'd be willing to accept something. But thank you all for listening. We really appreciate you guys dropping by. We'll probably be back towards our 9:30 time next week. We just moved up a little bit this week. We're going to try to get some guests for the show as well, but we'll just let you know as we work through it all and try to figure things out. We've been above 10 viewers. We've been above actually 13 viewers for the entire show, McGinnis, so we did pretty well here.
Yeah, it's nice to see people are taking an interest, and of course, Greg coming around. I know he watches the NFL show pretty consistently, so it's nice to have some consistent viewers here.
Yeah, so thank you all. Like I said, thank you all for stopping by. We really do appreciate this. Make sure to check out the gruelingtruth.com, the Grueling Truth Facebook page for all the other shows we do, all our podcasts, and all the other sports content on our network. Thank you all again for stopping by. We